Hello everyone. Before starting the video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. How to upgrade the firmware of the first Ruckus access point to Unleashed. In this video, I am going to show you that how can we upgrade the firmware of our first RUCKUS R510 access point from ZoneFlex Solo to Unleashed, or, we can say, from standalone to Unleashed. Actually, I am going to build an Unleashed network. To build an Unleashed network, it is very important that we upgrade the firmware of all the access points to Unleashed. As I mentioned in my previous video that, the access points without Unleashed firmware installed, cannot join an Unleashed network. If you don't know what an Unleashed network is, and how it works, then watch my previous video. So, if you are interested in building an Unleashed network, and want to manage all of your access points centrally from one location, then join me in this video series. I will show you everything step by step, so that you will have a better idea and understanding of building an Unleashed network. To build an Unleashed network, I am starting with my first RUCKUS R510 access point by upgrading its firmware to Unleashed. I would suggest, do not miss any part of the video. Without wasting any further time, let's start the video step by step. Step number 1. Connecting the access point to the PC. The recommended procedure to upgrade or downgrade the firmware is that, always, first reset the access point to its factory default settings and, then upgrade or downgrade the firmware. Although, we can also upgrade or downgrade the firmware of an access point, while it is connected to the network. But, we may get into some problems, which I will share later on in this video. I will follow the recommended procedure, so, I am directly connecting my access point to my PC via Ethernet cable. Now I will take the AP and insert the power pin from the rear side of the AP. Next I will insert one end of the Ethernet cable into the RJ45 port of the AP. Remember that, there are two Ethernet ports of the AP. One is the simple and other with PoE. Since I do not have any PoE adapter or switch, so I will use the simple port because I am using a separate power adapter. I will insert the other end of the Ethernet cable into my laptop's Ethernet port. Now I will plug in the power adapter into the power plug mounted on the wall to power on the access point. Wait for a moment so that the AP will power on and get into the stable mode. The green light is indicating that the access point is now in stable mode. I will show you the Ethernet LED light status on the laptop's Ethernet port. It is also blinking, which means that the Ethernet cable has been inserted properly and the AP is now trying to communicate with the laptop. As we can see that, I have connected my access point to my PC directly via Ethernet cable, and the AP is now in stable mode. So this step is completed. Let's go to the next step. Step number 2. Checking the IP address configuration and connectivity. In this step, I will make sure that our access point is connected to our PC and is communicating well. Since I am connecting my access point to my PC via Ethernet port, so I will show you the IP address configuration of my PC. I will simply go to the network connections and right-click on the Ethernet, then click on the status option. Click on the details button. We can see that I have assigned two different IP addresses to my PC's Ethernet. The first IP address from the 10 network is the IP address of my test network, which I am working on. Since my access point is on the test network, so it also has the current IP address of the test network, I mean, from the 10 network. The second IP address of 192 network is the IP address from the default network of RUCKUS access point. You will be thinking, why did I assign two different IP addresses to my PC? Since, in this video, while upgrading the firmware, I will switch between these two networks, so I have assigned both the IP addresses from the beginning. If not, we will have to assign these IP addresses later on, when it is required. I would suggest, to avoid any hurdle during the firmware upgrade process, you must also assign IP addresses of both the networks to your PC. Now close this menu and minimize the network connections page. I will open the command prompt page and type the command ping space, followed by the current IP address of my access point, with -T switch, to continuously ping the IP address. As we can see that, we are getting a response from our access point, means, our access point is powered on, connected, and alive. I will open another command prompt page. Here, I will type the same command, but the IP address will be the default IP address of RUCKUS access point, which is 192.168.0.1. We can see that, we are getting no response from the default IP address of our RUCKUS access point. We will check this response later on, when we reset our RUCKUS access point to its factory default settings. This step is also completed. Step number 3. Resetting the RUCKUS access point via web interface. To access the web interface of our access point, I will open the internet browser and type the full address, like https:// followed by the IP address of our access point. Hit the enter button. Click on the advanced button and then on the option, which says, proceed to, followed by the IP address of our access point. On the login page, I will enter my current username and password. Click on the login button. If I check the device name, we can see that I have changed the default device name of my RUCKUS access point. If I go to the Internet options, under the Configuration tab, we will see that I have assigned a static IP address to my access point. I will now go to the Reboot/Reset option, under the Maintenance tab. Click on the Reset Now button, to reset the access point to its factory default settings. You might be thinking that, why am I resetting this access point? As I mentioned before, the recommended procedure to upgrade a firmware is that, always reset your access point to factory default settings. Let me share something here with you guys. Even if we do not reset our access point to its factory default settings before upgrading the firmware to Unleashed, then after upgrading the firmware to Unleashed, all the configurations will be deleted in any case. So, all I am doing is to reset the AP in advance. We can also use the hard reset method. If you don't know how to hard reset a RUCKUS access point, then watch my video about how to hard reset a RUCKUS access point. I will also leave the link in the description. On the confirmation pop-up page, click on the OK button. Now wait for the access point to reset and reboot afterwards. Meanwhile, I will open both the command prompt pages to check the status of connectivity. We can see that the access point has stopped responding to the IP address of my test network. It is because the access point has been reset to factory default settings and in the reboot process. I will wait for a moment till the AP will be stabilized after rebooting. The access point has started responding to the default IP address, means the access point has been reset successfully and will get into the stable mode in a moment. I will minimize both the command prompt pages. Click on the OK button. Since the access point has been reset to default settings, so is the IP address. That is the reason it will not respond to the static IP address of my test network that I had assigned. So, I will open a new Windows tab, and again I will type the full URL, but this time, I will use the default IP address of the Ruckus access point to access its web interface. Click on the Advanced button and then click on the option, Proceed to followed by the default IP address of the access point. On the login page, this time, I will enter the default username and password of the Ruckus access point. The default username is super, and the default password is sp-admin. Click on the Login button. Since the AP has been reset to factory default settings, so, after accessing for the first time after resetting, it will ask to change the default password of the access point. So I will change the default password here and click on the Submit button. After clicking on the Submit button, it will redirect us to the login page again. This time, use the default username, but the password will be the new password, which we changed a few seconds before. After entering the credentials, log in to the web management interface. After resetting the access point, the device name has been reset. IP address is also reset from static to auto, means to dynamic. The access point has been successfully restored to its factory default settings. This step is completed here. Let's go to the next step. Step number 4. Upgrading the firmware to Unleashed. I have downloaded the latest available Unleashed firmware on my PC, let me show you. If you don't know how to download the Unleashed firmware for your Ruckus device, then watch my video on how to download an Unleashed firmware. I will leave the link in the description. The firmware name starting with 200 series is the Unleashed firmware. There are 2 firmware versions that I have downloaded on my PC. I will upgrade my access point to the latest firmware. To upgrade the firmware, click on the Upgrade option under the Maintenance tab. I am upgrading the firmware from my PC, so I will choose the option Local as upgrade method. Click on the button, choose File, and go to the location where we have downloaded and saved the firmware files. I will choose the latest one, then click on the Open button. Wait for a few seconds, the firmware file's name will be displayed here. Click on the Perform Upgrade button. The upgrade process will begin with loading the firmware file first, followed by rebooting the access point. Meanwhile, I will open both the command prompt pages to monitor the communication with the access point. The access point is still responding to the default IP address of the AP. I will forward my video here, so that it will save time, until the AP starts rebooting. The access point has stopped responding to the default IP address, means the AP is now in the reboot process, so it lost the communication. Wait for the AP to reboot and get into the stable mode. As soon as the AP reboots successfully, it will start responding to the ping command. We can see that the access point started responding to the ping command now. Means that the access point has been rebooted successfully, but we will wait further for a moment before accessing the AP's web interface so that the AP will stabilize completely. Click OK on the pop-up message, which says, "Great, I am all done." Here is the tricky part of this video. After upgrading the firmware to Unleashed, when it tries to build an Unleashed network, obviously, it will take some time to build an Unleashed network, but sometimes it will go into a continuous loop mode. The AP will stuck at this message, saying, "Building the Unleashed network, it may take a few minutes." This message should not take more than 10 minutes to disappear. If it gets stuck at this point, then don't worry. Your access point is working well. I will tell you, why does this happen? If you are connecting your access point to the network during the firmware upgrade process, then, upon successfully upgrading the firmware, once the access point reboots, it will start searching for a DHCP server on the network to get an IP address from. When this access point couldn't find the DHCP server on the network, it will keep searching, hence go into the loop mode and stuck here at this point. So, if it happens, then, simply, first of all reserve an IP address on the DHCP server for the access point and reboot your access point by force afterwards, I mean, plug out the power cable and replug it again. I would suggest, always reserve an IP address for your access point on the DHCP server before starting the upgrade process. So that, the access point will receive the same IP address from the DHCP server each time if reboots or reconnect to the network. Since, here, in this video, I have directly connected my AP to my PC, and there is no network and DHCP server between my PC and the access point. Then what will happen? The access point will first search for the IP address from the DHCP server, but when it finds no DHCP server, then it will assign the default IP address to itself. Now, let's go back towards the video. I will open the command prompt and will monitor the communication between my PC and access point. As it says, it will take a few minutes to build an Unleashed network, so we will wait for a few minutes. Let's see what will happen. If we check the response from the access point, we will see that the access point has stopped responding. So, we need to wait further, until and unless we get a response from the AP. The AP is now responding, but I will wait further for the web browser to auto-refresh and access the web management interface. The web browser did not auto-reload or refresh after waiting for about 5 minutes. I will click on the reload button to reload the page manually. We will get this page, where first I will click on the advanced button, and then on the link, which says, proceed to follow by the IP address. It showed an access error. Don't worry. If I open a new tab and enter the full URL, with the default IP address of the Ruckus access point, as I did before, we will see that the web interface of my access point, with Unleashed firmware installed, is accessed successfully. Congratulations! Our access point has been successfully upgraded to Unleashed. Step number 5. Unleashed network configuration with first access point. This is the main page, where we will begin with the configuration of our first access point, with Unleashed firmware installed, to build an Unleashed network. There are two options, number 1, quick install, and number 2, custom install. I will go with custom install, and I also will recommend you to go with Custom Install. On this page, choose the option Advanced Install. Click on the Next button. On this page we can see the firmware version, which we upgraded our AP to. Next, in the name field, enter any name you want to assign to this AP. In the country code, choose your country. I will leave the mesh option unchecked. Click on the Next button. On this page, I will choose the manual option to assign a static IP address, along with the subnet mask, the gateway, and the primary DNS server. All the fields with steric mark are mandatory, and we cannot leave any of these fields empty. If we want this AP to get an IP address from the DHCP server, then we will choose the option DHCP, but we need to reserve an IP address for our AP on the DHCP server. Remember, as I mentioned before, that we need to reserve an IP address for our AP before starting the upgrade process. If we choose the option DHCP and reserve an IP address for our AP at this time, then, after rebooting, our access point will receive the reserved IP address. Since I have a separate DHCP server to assign IP addresses to clients, I will leave the DHCP server option unchecked because I do not want this AP to assign IP addresses to the clients. Click on the Next button. Here in the name, I mean the SSID field, enter the first SSID, and our clients will be connected to this SSIDs. We can create many SSIDs once we complete this setup. For the password, choose the Yes option, and then enter the password as per the recommended rules. If you want to keep this open, I mean, if you want your clients to connect to this SSID without any password, then click on No option. Click on the Next button. If you want to change the admin name, we can do it right here, but I will leave the admin name as it is, and, in the password field, enter a complex password, consisting of capital and small letters, along with digits and special characters. Retype the same password in the Confirm Password field. I will leave the password recovery option unchecked for now. Click on the Next button. All the configurations that we have done till now on this Unleashed access point to build an Unleashed network are here to review on this page. Review all the settings. If you are okay with these settings or configurations, then click on the Finish button. Since I am satisfied with all these configurations that I done, so I will click on the Finish button. After clicking on the Finish button, it will ask that this AP will reboot now to apply all the settings. Click on the Yes button. If I check the response from the new static IP address that I assigned just now, we will see that the static IP address has been assigned. That's why we start receiving response from the static IP address now. Since the default IP address has been changed to static IP address, so the default IP address will stop responding. We will wait for a moment till the AP reboots successfully and gets into the stable mode. I will forward the video here to save your time. This message will appear after rebooting, saying that the Unleashed master is now configured. It is the first access point with Unleashed firmware, that's why it says, the Unleashed master. The first access point with Unleashed firmware has been configured successfully. After clicking on the Finish button, it will be accessible, but since I have changed the default IP address to a static one, so I will now try to access the Unleashed master AP with static IP address. I will open a new tab and type the full URL followed by the static IP address and press the Enter button. As usual, press the Advanced button and then the link given below to get to the login page. Enter the username and password on the login page, and then click on the Unleash button. We have successfully logged in. The main page will look like this. On the top of the page, the system name refers to this access point's name. If I click on the Wi-Fi networks, we will see the SSID, which we created during the setup wizard. Upon adding other access points to this network, all the SSIDs will be created and managed here. Let me show you something else. If I scroll down and click on the Admin and Services tab, we again will see the name of this access point in the name field. The next setting is the preferred master. What is the preferred master? When other access points with Unleashed firmware join this network, then all the access points will be shown here, and we can choose the one access point as primary master, and the second access point as secondary master. All the configurations will be synchronized among the primary master and the secondary master. If for some reason the primary master goes down, then the secondary master will replace the primary master. Since I want this access point to be the primary master, so I will select it in the primary master field, and then I will click on the Apply button to save the configurations. That's it. In this video, we have successfully upgraded the firmware of our first access point from ZoneFlex Solo to Unleashed, and we also have made our first access point with Unleashed firmware as primary master. Thanks for watching this video. In the next video, I will upgrade the firmware of another access point and join to the Unleashed network. Hi. If you liked this video, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Also leave your query in the comments section below. I will be more than happy to entertain. Thanks.